Hello.
All right? Good. Well, thank you so much for coming over to see us. Thank you so much to the team at KIKK for hosting us. We're having a great time so far, and very happy to see everyone out here. I'm Pedro, and
I'm James.
and together we run OMSE, based in London. And before we show anything or talk too much about it, one thing that we really love to mention, and I think it's very important for us, is a bit the origin of the name OMSE. And we'll get into the details of it in a minute, but in a nutshell, OMSE derives from a Swedish word that means like-minded. And that ethos and that approach is one of the main drives for why we have a design studio to begin with. I think for us, creating that community of like-minded people who all want to dream up incredible projects is what keeps us excited. And we just really want to share an appreciation for all the people who have worked with us over the years. Obviously, you've seen two of us on stage, but we have an amazing team of 7 people and dozens of incredible artists and designers that have joined us over the years. So we love this community, and a big shout out to Inga Zemele, a great friend of the studio, super talented illustrator that just kind of captured this little illustration of us kind of dreaming up some insane things together. In terms of what we do, we create simple, striking brands. For us, simplicity is crucial in terms of communicating with honesty, with directness, and just with effectiveness. And I think just kind of arriving at an idea that is like as simple as it can be is one of the most satisfying things for us. But obviously, we want to make sure that everything we do has this level of being incredibly inspiring and beautiful and imbued with joy. And I think we want to create brands like that in the world so we can experience the kinds of things that get us excited and that kind of reach us at the core. What that looks like really varies, both in terms of the types of people that we work with, from the outputs of the work. We work with anything from kind of cultural institutions to products, to drinks and foods, and innovation. And we just love that diversity, and it allows us to explore many different areas. So this is a brief snapshot of what that work looks like. But ultimately, that's all that you can see on the surface. And James and I often joke about what it's like to run an independent design studio. And it's very much like looking at ducks. From the outside and from the surface, everything is very calm, everything is very polished and well put together. But if you were to go underwater beneath the surface, you're going to see like 2 little legs kicking like crazy all the time, nonstop. There's a lot of joy in that process, but obviously there's a lot of ups and downs, and it can be a struggle at times. So today, we want to focus a little bit less on the finished piece and actually take you under the water with us and show you the duck's legs and what it's like on a daily basis to be keeping this creative community and creating all this work on a regular basis. And we're going to touch on 3 chapters that the studio has gone through, from the early days when we were starting out, when James was starting the studio out, to then a moment where we had to just kind of push through and carry on, and a bit of the fresh start that we're actually going through at the moment.
Cheers. All right, so yeah, going to talk about how OMSE began. And in many ways, it started in Sweden for me. This is a picture of me. I just sort of graduated from Göteborg Universitetet. I had done an Erasmus year, finishing there, but before that, I was studying in Sydney. And shortly after my degree, I came back to Sydney to do a freelance project for a Swedish shop called Some Days. And I decided to invite, basically I had applied for a job, and I decided to invite the people who were deciding whether I should get this job to that event. So we've got a picture of Britain here, and then Rochelle. The job was at this company, this music festival company called Fuzzy, and they're really huge in Australia. They have five, basically in every state in Australia, they have like a massive party. Lots of big acts, from Justice to kind of, well, actually, we'll see them in a second, but like huge array of different acts. And our job, whilst we were there, was to kind of create the artwork to kind of promote these different events. One of the events was called Summer Field Days, and that was in Brisbane. And we thought, maybe to kind of bring this party to life, what would be really fun is if we represent it through photography. And I think at that time, Britton and I were like obsessed with this sort of stuff. So we threw all these objects up into the air, thinking like, that's a bit of a party vibe. This is great, but didn't quite pass. And we ended up with a picture of a girl licking an ice cream. Didn't dampen our spirits though. We really felt like there's something in this photography thing. So we kept going, and we got more ambitious. This is for an event in Sydney Harbour called Sure Thing. So beautiful, like you see the Opera House, and you can see like the Darling Harbour. Like you kind of have to be there, but we thought maybe we could create like this underwater aquarium. And I mean, looking back, this is kind of nuts that we did this, because this is real fish in this picture. And then we're like, okay, we've got our scene. David Guetta belongs in here. It didn't quite pass again. I feel like maybe we were being stubborn designers, but, looking back, I feel like that maybe we were being stubborn designers, but not everything we did got cut. The main event that they had was this event called Park Life, and that was in every state in Australia. And each year, again, we had to come up with like a new artwork for it. And we thought maybe we could create like this scene or kind of like actually represent the festival with these letters. So again, like just started building the letters, and we ended up with this, which was sick. But what was even better was we created all the different scenes that you would sort of come across at a festival on each letter. So, queuing for the toilet, streakers, flashes. I feel like, again, we were probably having a little bit too much fun with it, because then people having sex. All these sorts of fun things that happen at festivals. But anyway, we were doing all this great work, and we were really proud of it. And we wanted to give it a name. So we came across OMSE in the Swedish dictionary. As you know, I was obsessed with Sweden, and Britain also followed suit. We basically had a love of kind of a lot of their design philosophies. But I felt like I wasn't ready to start a studio, neither did Britain. So I left. I actually made this book, and I headed over to New York. And for about a year, I kind of did internships, I freelanced, I kind of just sort of as much as I possibly could. And then I ended up at this place called Wolf Ollens in New York. And it was a really exciting time. I remember the actual space. It was like this big loft in Soho. Britton stayed in Sydney. He worked at Interbrand Sydney. And we kept freelancing on the side in addition to kind of working on the stuff that we were supposed to be doing. And this is actually where I met Pedro. Here he is, not enjoying a marshmallow, about to become a s'more.
Still not a big fan.
But it wasn't long until I decided it was time to move on. I was in New York for about 3 years, and I moved to London, and I moved to the Wolf Ollens London office. And part of it was just to get to know my family a bit better. Although I'm Australian, my parents immigrated from the UK. And actually, shortly after I moved over, so did Pedro. Here we are on the football team for Wolf Ollens. And it was about this time that actually Britton also moved over from Sydney to work at a place called Ragged Edge. And so we thought maybe the timing's right. Maybe we should give this a shot. So we basically quit our full-time jobs and started in this co-working space. It's actually Accept and Proceed's now office, but they kind of started off as like a co-working space as well. And we just started out. We did all the usual things. I went to a rave and I met Bonobo's photographer, and then I convinced him to take a photo of Britton and I. So we got the shot, and I was like, sick, we're starting off, everything's good. Then we coded our own website. We added lots of work to try and make ourselves look busy. But actually, there's only one project on here, Rhythm and Vines, really. And then the startings of some others. But the problem was, and the problem that many people have when they kind of start, is we don't actually have any work. What do we do? So it kind of leads me to this sort of first point, or first piece of advice, which we still take ourselves today, which is be your first client. at the time, Britain was working on this typeface called Modern Era, and we were like, okay, maybe we could start a type foundry. And back in 2016, there weren't that many type foundries about. There weren't that many programs that were that easy to use to create fonts. And so we gave it a shot. Created the specimen. We made this sort of website to kind of sell it. And pretty much overnight, we just started selling typefaces. It was kind of nuts. And so we started to have a bit of a passive income. We also started to win some actual commercial work. And so we started to grow, and we hired our first designer, which is Tom, just there, checking out the type tester, and then our first intern, Mitchell. It felt really exciting, and I think the great thing about doing your own work, in addition to the commercial stuff, is you can kind of always balance things out. So we came up with this idea to make 3 beers with 3 future typefaces that we were going to make. And we thought we could have like a font launch for each typeface. The first one was called Athletics, and this was after Modern Era. And we had this exhibition called Just Type It, and it was at All Press, which is like a coffee roastery in East London. They very kindly gave us the venue and helped sponsor the event. We then got all of our favorite studios at the time to design posters using Athletics. Got Studio Dunbar on the left, and Studio Hay on the right. And it was a big party. It was lots of fun, lots of type beer, lots of specimens. And it was at that event we actually also met Ben and Malone. We decided to have like a competition to sort of open up to all universities to enter a poster as well. The prize being that your poster, if selected, would be amongst some of who we deemed to be the best studios at the time. And they were the only ones that kind of took the brief a bit further and added motion. And we were just really impressed by this. And so we decided to kind of give them both an internship. And so straight after that, we also got our first bigger kind of commercial job. It was for Itsu. If you're not familiar with Itsu, it's like a big sushi restaurant chain in London. They have 50 stores, I think. And this brief was to kind of launch a pot soup. And we took inspiration from Zoolander. I'm not sure if anyone's seen it here, but we hired a hand model. And we launched it during Fashion Week. And we had soup runs, and it was lots of fun. But from there, we were kind of like, okay, we need a space for Ben and Malone as well. So we kind of packed up our tiny little corridor office and moved into the fishbowl. I call it the fishbowl because it was hot as fuck. We literally lasted 6 months before we were like, we cannot be here any longer. But it was very pretty looking. So after moving in there and Ben and Malone joining, we decided to kind of do our next font launch alongside the commercial stuff. And this time we were really interested in learning a new skill. We wanted to learn about AR and how do you do it? What could we do with it? We didn't feel like there were any graphic designers or many people in the design industry doing it at the time. This is back in 2018. And so we thought we could have a font launch for our third typeface that was like an AR exhibition, but this time we would design all the exhibits. And this is it. This time we hired a space, and what you did was you downloaded the app, and then you walked around, and then all of the different things came to life. We rotoscoped this footage so you can kind of see what it would have looked like. That's what it would have looked like. Again, more type beers. I completely forgot about this, but we ended up we bought 3,000 type beers and then just didn't even think about it, but it was like a mad dash to kind of get rid of them because they go off after 6 months. And originally our trajectory was a lot longer. But anyway, this gives you a sense. And then I think another thing that was really nice about this was that we weren't expecting this, but a lot of people started sharing content and posting about it. And it got a lot of recognition at the time. Which was awesome. It was just really cool to see people actually using it. And so we decided to kind of enter it into an award, not expecting anything off it, but just why not? And we won. It was kind of crazy. It was for Creative Review. And yeah, self-initiated. So it's, again, like we really just didn't expect it. But it was kind of a big moment for us, not because we won the award, but because of this next point. Projects win projects. So from Agenda being seen in Creative Review, it led to our next kind of big project, which was for Printworks, which is a massive music venue in London. It's unfortunately just closed, but essentially it's a music venue in an old Printworks factory. Lots of amazing artists have played there over the years. And they came to us wanting us to do something kind of similar to Agenda, but turning London into like an AR exhibition. They also didn't have any acts, so it was partly to kind of promote the exhibition, promote the events, the season to come, in lieu of having figured out who the artists were. This is the factory, so it's massive, and this is what we did. So that was cool. And everything was going really, really well. This is our summer party. But Tom decided to move on, but then we had 2 new joiners. We were 6 people. And it just felt like lots of work was coming our way. And we had both the Type Foundry and the design studio, and it was just, everything was on the up. But little did I know that everything was about to change. The first time I spoke about this, I actually cried on stage because it's such a hard thing to talk about. But I'm going to do my best to keep my composure this time. I have this sunset because it's kind of like the end of summer, which marks, as I say, it was the end of summer. And it was at that time that, unfortunately, Britton said to me that he no longer wanted to do graphic design or branding. He just wanted to focus on type. And he also wanted to move back to Sydney and to kind of start a family, which totally get. But it meant that we had to split OMSE and OMSE type. Luckily, it was quite easy to do that because he wanted to kind of keep pursuing type more than the other side, and I wanted to keep pursuing the brand side. So he renamed OMSE type as family type and left. That was kind of a bummer because it meant that we had to downgrade our office, but not the end of the world. Everyone was really, really good about it. And then shortly after that, Ben and Malone decided that they also wanted to leave. And you should check out Too Much Studio, epic interaction and website studio. They do so much good work, and we still work with them today. But then meant that we were down to 3. And you can probably see what's happening or coming, but then COVID happened, and we lost all of our clients, and I put Ed and Holly on furlough, and then I was just sort of trying to kind of do 3 people's work through that period. And it was a lot. I just felt like, is there any point in doing this anymore? darkness, absolute darkness. I also felt really stuck because at the time we were known for AR, we were known for being a type studio, we were known for being a graphic design studio, but I didn't feel like we were any of these things. And so this next chapter is about like carrying on. It was around that time that this project came into my inbox from this church in Hackney. It's called St. John at Hackney, and essentially they just won a grant for £1 million, which sounds like a lot, but actually all of it went into restoring this church. They got John Pawson Architects to rethink it, and then obviously there was all the costs associated with doing it. And at the time, the vicar in charge he seemed really up for like pushing where they sat and what they could do. And we came up with all these ideas together, like could they open a brewery? Could they open a cafe? Could they become a gig venue again? They kind of had lots of people in the past play, like the XX and Ricky Martin of all people. But they really bought into this idea, and I thought, okay, cool. Okay, maybe this is that project. I felt like, and the budget was really nothing, it was 15K, but I felt like if I just put everything into this project, maybe I can turn things around. And I come to this line, it doesn't have to be shit. I mean, just because it's a church doesn't mean it has to look like a church or it has to be shit. And so we went ahead and did this work. So it did help, and it really did help reposition things, but I was just so burnt out. I think I just couldn't really carry on. Kind of looks like I'm turning it to alcohol here, but actually I got some really good advice to get a coach. And this was my coach. We made 3 goals that seemed impossible to me at the time. One was find a new business partner. The other was find a new space, like a new office. And the last was take 3 months off.
So before we continue with some of these goals and how we're faring with these, we're going to rewind for a little bit, go back in time, and go to a slightly different place, to a slightly different starting point, which is a little bit warmer than Sweden, a slightly different dress code, require fewer layers, to Rio, where I grew up. And obviously, if you know most people who are normal and from Rio, they just love kind of connecting to this side of the city and exploring this, and it is amazing. But growing up, I always felt like I was much more in my zone, in my element, kind of connecting with people who just had a slightly different set of interests, and we spent a lot of time kind of like creating a little community where we just kind of explore and play around with like illustration and writing. animation films, playing around with like kind of creating our own stories and kind of our own objects, and just kind of playing around, exploring what I realized later was design, and spent way too much time just geeking over Flash, which I thought was the coolest software at the time. And I thought that, if I wanted to kind of keep growing creatively and exploring new things creatively and kind of surround myself with the people that I wanted to surround myself with, I needed to try something else. And so, in a slightly masochistic move, I left the sunnier landscape of Rio and moved to New York, which looks like this in January, when, at the time that I moved over there. And it was a big shock to the system. It was completely different from anything I had experienced, but it was an incredible shock to the system at the same time, because it really kind of like motivated me and pushed me. And I just kind of was constantly surrounded by some incredible and very inspiring people, some of which obviously became incredible friends that I've had for many, many years. Worked in some amazing studios as well until I landed a job at Wolf Olins, like James mentioned. And even though James and I were there for many years together, we only ever worked on one project, and it was a very random internal brief very soon after I joined, where they were working on like an internal kind of a website for the holiday season, and James and I just got to drawing kind of like funny characters and animals and pictures. But that aside, many years went by. Many projects went by that were a little bit more ambitious than that holiday card, and I got to learn a lot. And from a very young age, from when I first joined the studio, be exposed to working with some very challenging, very demanding, very large clients, and just kind of that learning experience was just unbelievable and super valuable. It not only allowed me to do some work that I would have never dreamed of growing up, but it also allowed me to move from New York to then move to London to continue exploring different paths in different places. And it allowed me to grow from like a junior designer from when I first joined to a creative director. All that's well and good, but after being a creative director for a couple of years in a bigger company, I started to get a bit of a niche of what else was out there, and there was a path there that was set for me, and that had been an incredible journey to that point, but it just felt a little bit scripted and a little bit predictable. And I started to be a little bit curious about what would happen if I just jump off road for a second and try to explore different ways. And I started to kind of have an itch to do something else. And as these things go, luckily around that time, I got a message at 8:23 a.m. from James, who I hadn't seen for a couple of years at that point, and being a morning person, I really appreciated the time of the message, asking if he wanted to catch up and see how things were. And he told me everything that he shared with us tonight, and I told him where I was at, and it just seemed like things were clicking, and it just seems like the things that we were curious to do and that we needed to do sort of complemented each other. And then we started to kind of, what was initially just kind of one get-together started to become a series of conversations over the course of a few weeks to solidify things. And at some point, James showed me a project that the team was working on for the first Indo-Japanese gym. And this was started by a music promoter who was running one of the biggest festivals in Resident Advisor. He's based in Goa, in India. But during the pandemic, he had to pivot, and he decided to start making gin so he could send the party home to people's places so they could still keep enjoying that. He had Indian and Japanese heritage, so he also wanted to pay tribute to that in the product. And James and the team had come up with a really nice name that just kind of really celebrated that kind of coming together of two cultures simply by paying attention to the place where the two cultures literally meet on the words to come up with the name Doja for it. And they also had summarized what the brand and the product was about in a way that I thought was like really beautiful and simple, and just a very articulate way of saying that basically this is, it's just tasting two cultures in one sip. And I just loved the purity of that idea, and I loved the two options that the team had presented in the concept development phase even more. And that's something that I also really resonate with. It's just that strict process, not to be annoying, but just to kind of have something that the team can stick to in a healthy way, so we're not just kind of killing ourselves to do the work, but that just gives a lot of clarity to everything that we do. And you can see how one option involves something that potentially feels a little bit bold, kind of literally playing around with the letters of the word doja in a way that we can push a bit more if there's more of the Japanese ingredients present in a certain drink, or we can push to the other side if there's more of the Indian ingredients in the same drink, which gives a really nice packaging system, communication system, always playing around with that kind of merging of two things. And another way that idea could be expressed was by literally mixing everything together, but just using letter forms and typography to do that, celebrating the coming together of Latin, Devanagari, and Japanese script to create this playful and very rich and textural typographic language to really celebrate that Indo-Japanese origin, which can look quite beautiful in packaging as well, especially if you start to play around with layers and in communications once again. And I think there was something about this process and this presentation that really resonated with me, and what I saw in that was just kind of these simple ideas expressed beautifully, and that really kind of connected with what we like to do as designers, really, is just come up with like those pure ideas, but then just kind of do something that really kind of reaches people in the guts, and that just have that sense of expressiveness and something that just feels inspiring and a little bit out of the ordinary. The process also, like I said, resonated, which doesn't mean that we don't get weird feedback. For example, a message which came on Instagram, which was a picture of a teal car, and the client is asking if he loves the color of the car, and he's asking if that can be part of the brand. And as much as we have a solid process, we're also very nice people, so we do include it. So if you look 2/3 from the bottom, from the top of the screen, you can see a little bit of streak of teal there in the gradient for the brand. But you can also see how that kind of clear process and that clear thinking leads to a final outcome that is very close to even the first presentation to make things smooth, but also still beautiful and inspiring and different, which can be exciting even to the simplest touch point like a shipping box. And so I was hooked, and I joined the OMSE team, which just gives us, which for us is this incredible platform to kind of play around, goof around, have fun with each other, and kind of see how a spinning head in real life can become a brand or a piece of communication for a client. So that sense of playfulness, but taking it seriously, and just kind of crafting something amazing is something that we try to do on a daily basis. And another exciting thing, and it again ties into that, one of the goals that James was talking about, was that the first thing that we did when I first joined was like we went around London to figure out what the home for the studio needs to be like. So we went to loads of places until we finally landed in a place where we're based now, which is a lovely space in Shoreditch, where it just feels like there's a nurturing and a stimulating environment for us to exchange our ideas. And it's been a busy time in the last few years, working on several projects, growing the team, throwing a few really nice studio parties, working with some amazing collaborators, whose work we really love, doing a couple of team offsites, and obviously going through a really convenient power outage, which happened just before one of the parties. But just kind of back to the work, there were many to speak about, but one that really kind of inspired us because it connected with a lot of the things that we care about was actually a project for a company called Black Bee Honey that we're still working with at the moment. But there are two beekeepers who came to us with the fact that we didn't know at all at the time that honey is actually the third most faked food in the world. Apparently most of what you get around is actually just sugar syrup mixed with like some other things. And they were very passionate about not doing things this way, not only because real pure honey tastes much better, but also because producing at this large scale is actually kind of massacring like the wild meadow flowers that just actually bees, but also other insects need to survive. And if they die, then we can't grow our own food, and it means that we're in trouble as well. So I think that connection from just creating a beautiful, delicious product to then connecting to a bigger mission was something that we were really excited about. And they just had this like really wild creativity, wild energy behind them, wild ambition, but a slightly polite brand. And we felt like we needed to do something better, and we could do something better together. So we got to doing what we love to do best, just kind of coming together and playing around and exploring things, seeing what we can make out of honey. Could it be type? Could it be anything? And this is the final outcome.
Roubar, 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 manhã. roubar, 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 manhã, nha, nha, nha.
So again, like a project.
Yeah, a project that's really close to our hearts and close to our stomachs because we have loads of it in the studio and we're obsessed.
Kilograms.
So everything's going well. Like I mentioned, we're busy, we're eating honey, we're designing stuff. But then one day, James tells me that he's off. He's going away. He's disappearing for 3 months. Not only that, he's going to Brazil while the World Cup is happening, and he's just sending me pictures from my favorite restaurants on the day that I have a client presentation, just like bragging like that. But it was actually a really exciting time, and for us, it really marks not only a lot of interesting mosquito bites, but the beginning of a new, fresh start for the studio that we're on now, and that we're very excited to share as well.
So funny. There's like so many amazing pictures on this, and it's every time it's the mosquito bite, my foot with all these mosquito bites that stands out. I think it was an amazing time that I had those 3 months to kind of recoup. And something happened that I didn't expect to happen, which was I started thinking about work. The whole point was to get away from work, but I started thinking about work, but not in the sense like, are we going to make enough money? What sort of clients do we want to work with? That sort of thing. But actually, what do we want to do? Like, what do we want to do? What projects do we want to work on? And come back to this very first point that we said at the start, which was like, be your first client. And of some of the ideas, one of them I was really, really excited about. So I came back from Brazil and had a chat with Pedro at our offsite, and I was like, man, time is running out. He's like, yeah? I was like, time is running out. It's like, what? But as we all know, time is running out for the planet. And the unfortunate thing for us as designers is our job is to create. And by creating, we're adding to the problem. So I was interested in a project that kind of spoke to this. And it was going to be really simple, 24 clocks, 24 artists, 24 hours. And the idea was to kind of make all these clocks from plastic-free materials. I'm not sure if anyone here has heard of Plastic Free, but it's an amazing platform. And they rep all the sorts of materials that you can use that don't have plastic in them, that biodegrade. And they loved the idea of this project, and so they suggested these 4 materials. We've got Miriam, which is a fake leather. We've got Nopla, which is seaweed, hemp, paper, and then we've got Traceless, which is like this gum that you put in food packaging. So they came on board, and then from there, we kind of kept moving forward. We worked with Ebba Architects to design the clock. It was kind of like a modern take on a grandfather clock that could be hung in any way. And then we worked with Ardep to kind of actually make the clocks. The exhibition happened this year. And in addition to kind of like, I'm jumping ahead, but to kind of, again, sort of referencing some of the stuff we did at the start, we decided to have a competition open to anyone to kind of design clock faces. These were 3 of the winners, and then they were kind of made into clocks alongside some of the other people that we chose. And this is kind of like a preview of the event that we sent out. And we had it at 100 Shoreditch in London, which was amazing. We kind of turned the entry into a clock, and we obviously had the exhibition there. Unfortunately, it was just for London Design Festival, but there's still this website up, which was actually done by Too Much, who we spoke about earlier. So you can still see some of the designs and check out more information about the materials if you head to timesrunningout.omse.co. But with 13 seconds to go,
I really ran out.
that is We come to the very end, and I guess we'll just come back to these kind of 4 things that we wanted to kind of leave with you. So be your first client, really scratch those itches and learn about new things. Projects do win projects, so kind of focus on the ones that you want to win. And then it doesn't have to be shit. Every project is an opportunity, and ask for help. Thank you, everyone.